Special. The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news. In-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Studio, mics are up. And a good morning to you once more, Lagos. You are tuned in and listening to Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. It's yours truly, Folu. Good morning and welcome inside a Freshly Pressed. 31 minutes gone past 7. Today, Wednesday, the 1st of August. We are ready to jump into the drama of today's newspaper stories. Joining us to help with the analysis this morning, we've got a full complement of our analysts. Just shoot a very quick tweet to us. Use the hashtag FreshlyPress981. You'll see that up on our Twitter handle. We've already put out the list of stories there, so you know exactly what we're going to be talking about, expecting. And of course, we will also be monitoring our live stream. Our gorgeous faces in the studio this morning. Go over to youtube.com/smooth981fm. All right, now first thing, defecting and moving around and changing coats and turning colours, shall we? We've got this story in from the Punch newspaper. Saraki and the Kwara governor dump APC and join PDP. Can we say this is a surprise? I don't think that this is coming as a shock to anyone, but it has still made headline news, and it set social media all ablaze. So, Devoe, I'm going to go to you. Very interesting comments made by, of course, Saraki, who's also the Senate president, saying that it was not a decision that he made lightly. He says that he's tired for so long, did all that was humanly possible.
Do I have thoughts? I have statements.
Please, what are your statements on this?
Saraki makes the latest jumping jack flash in our polity at the moment. As we've been watching, there has been a very high tension, highly placed musical chairs going on within our politics. And it will continue because it has been in the works for
the Senate president before. He has been highly placed in his previous political party. From the moment that he moved over, especially the way that he became Senate president, there had always been questions as to exactly which side is he, quote unquote, working for, essentially. We've sort of seen that escalate throughout. So with a lot of the commentary that's coming through from him, how does that really play out? How does that then make him seem as though he's necessarily the outsider, if this sort of the position he'd taken from the onset? And what does that say really about the character of our politicians as a whole, and their desire to switch sides whenever it's time for a new elective cycle?
Or whenever it's not in their interest.
And whenever it's not in their interest.
Yes, what I would say, first of all, is that now we know that PDP and APC are the same. It's just
we
which
didn't
side,
know this before.
Well, it's just which side you're sitting on. Secondly, our politics has never been about the interests of the people and what we have in order, because you would wonder, all the infighting, was it about the people, or was it about their personal interest in what came to them? Here, he's actually listening them out. But I would like us to actually put into question the fact that, into consideration that Saraki was the number 3 man. I think that he wasn't dealt with the way he should have been for someone who had such a highly position. Secondly, the nature of our politics is about numbers. Nobody's saying that because of his move that maybe the PDP is going to win. Have their structures, not just at the federal level, but down to the state level, to see how this will influence the new outcome of the elections coming.
That's what's happening. Okay, understood. Anything else anyone wants to chip in? Because I know this is quite a dramatic story as it unfolds, or we'll just watch and see what else comes out to play.
Let me not betray my bias, so it's fine.
Thank you very much for that, Devoe. Thank you. Of course, we are taking your comments on this particular story, Lagos. I'm sure you all have things to say. But let us move on to our next story, Orji, which I will come to you on this one. It's from ThisDay newspaper. We're talking about Lagos banning the hijab in schools pending a Supreme Court decision. Now, there has been a lot of back and forth on this. We do know that, according to the story, Lagos state government yesterday said that it would not allow the use of hijab in its schools until the Supreme Court determines an appeal seeking to upturn the decision of the Court of Appeal. Now, the Court of Appeal had set aside an earlier decision of the Lagos High Court, which had banned the students in public schools from putting on their hijab, and then it's sort of gone on from there. So, Orji, do you want to take us through that story, please?
Yes, I need to, because the headline is misleading.
Yes.
Because look at the headline, it says Lagos bans hijab in schools pending Supreme Court decision. So someone who doesn't know will just think that this is a new development. They just decided to ban hijab in schools. What actually happened here is that two girls from, I don't know, they mentioning their name, two girls under the auspices of the Muslim Student Society of Nigeria had gone to court a while back, challenging the decision of the Lagos State government to prevent them from wearing their hijab, saying it's unconstitutional and discriminatory on grounds of religion.
Yes.
The Lagos High Court dismissed in October 2014, dismissed the action, and they appealed. In July 2000, unconstitutional and discriminatory for the Lagos State government to stop them from wearing their hijab, which their religion entitled them to. So
yes.
Sometime in 2017, Lagos State government then appealed to the Supreme Court. So what's happening here is that the case is now currently at the Supreme Court. But Lagos State government is saying that we are not going to give effect to the decision of the Court of Appeal, because giving effect to the Court of Appeal decision would mean allowing Muslims, Muslim girls wear hijab in those schools. So that's why I said it's not like it's something new.
Yes,
but
it's just a continuing dispute.
Yes, on the law, I'm not aware that there's any, because the law is that judgments of courts remain valid on the set aside. The decision of the court in Nigeria today on this issue is that it is unconstitutional to stop people from wearing hijab. That is from
that is the decision at the moment, yes.
So until the Supreme Court says otherwise, I would have expected the Lagos government to say, okay, when we obey or maintain status quo by allowing you wear it pending the outcome of decision.
But instead they're choosing to maintain their previous status quo.
So which is like turning the law on its head.
Okay.
Except because the story does not say whether or not there is because it's only under that circumstance alone that Lagos State government should be writing. Looked at, but by the time it was to be taken, the appeal had been entered. The Court of Appeal could not, and the Court of Appeal asked them to withdraw the application and refile it at the Supreme Court. I don't know if they did. Okay. So the point is that I would have expected them to obey the Court of Appeal decision until the Supreme Court says otherwise. That's one point. There are two other things in the story, which is that the Lagos State government also said they've maintained that the law for now is that religious institutions are exempted from paying taxes, but those who are involved in commercial activities will pay tax. Interesting. I
want to see how that's going to be interpreted.
Number three, that's the final point there, is that they have also debunked rumors, because we heard a day or two ago that Lagos State government was going to pay salaries to some pastors and imams, but he has said he here, being the State Commissioner for Home Affairs, Dr. Abdulateef Abdul Karim, that no, that is not correct. What he simply said is that pastors and imams, in fact, religious leaders, should be advocates of anti-corruption and all that. That is no intention to pay salaries to them. Well, I don't know what he said at first, but he's now coming out to say that's not what I said. So that's okay.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Quickly, let's move on to the next story. Speaking of the pressures that some of the politicians are under, let's talk about how the EFCC has grilled Ekweremadu over alleged conspiracy and money laundering. We're taking this particular story from the New Telegraph. Again, you'll see versions of it across pretty much all your national newspapers, some with a more dramatic headline. But operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission yesterday interacted, they say, with the Deputy Senate President, Dr. Ekweremadu, over a case dealing with alleged conspiracy, abuse of office, and money laundering. Now, this was pursuant to a letter that was sent to them on the 24th of July, just not too long ago, and saying it was connected to a special presidential panel for recovery of public property. Well, your thoughts on this story?
Yes, well, let me start by saying that it's as well too, according to the report anyway, he was in the office at about 9 o'clock, and up until about 5:50 p.m. he was still there. So
it was a grilling.
It was some serious grilling taking place. But when we look at the situation of things anyway, we're talking about the fact that this incident has actually been started quite a few weeks ago, you know, especially during the time where the Senate Deputy President's house was also blockaded as well, and he was prevented from actually attending plenary then.
Yes. On
that same day, there were allegations and charges that were leveled against him by the EFCC, that there were corruption charges and money laundering cases. It's funny how you find out that these sorts of allegations always tend to occur around the time where there's some certain issues that has to do with defections or people cross carpeting. You know, we have this incidents as well too with the governor of Benue as well too. You know, as of yesterday, there's some charges as well that has been leveled against him, that there has been misappropriation of about 22 billion naira or so, and this investigation has been going on since 2016. So you tend to wonder, how come these cases are just coming up now? How come they're just bringing up right about this point in time? But you know, the funny thing about this story is that it actually talks about the panel, which has actually been the Special Presidential Investigation Panel for Recovery of Public Properties. These are properties that are alleged or are actually being investigated for that has been acquired through illicit means or so.
Perhaps proceeds of crimes.
Yes, exactly.
It out.
So don't carry out thoroughly, but it's just a temporary forfeiture.
But I'm not aware of any decision.
But at the moment, the laws still stand.
Well, for now, it does.
Because Nigeria is a special case. All right. But Gbolahan, thank you very much for that. I appreciate hearing from you. Lots of messages, so let's see if I can get through a couple of them. MI from Akoka says, Saraki's move was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when. Because his DNA, well, it's instinctively umbrella. And his carefully worded reasons, that is rather instructive. He goes on to say, it's very interesting because for the first time in our nascent democracy, the Senate President and his deputy will be from a different party than the President. Now, it might be for selfish motives, but in the larger picture, it is good for our democracy. Eku jumping Jack, says MI from Akoka. We've got more coming in still. This is in from, let's see, what is your name? Chibuna, who says, good morning. Please, let's not waste airtime on cross-carpeting of politicians. It's all about personal interest. We all clamor for a favorable environment for the average Nigerian to do business and work, to fend for themselves, and all others are nice to have. Our politicians don't serve or have our common values and goals. Just wait for Act 1, Scene 4. And this one comes in from Uncle Jay, who says, I don't think anyone in Saraki's shoes who's been openly humiliated would like to continue to dance to the tune of such a party. You just put yourself in his shoes unless you have no voice of own, and it will obviously affect the party because see the powers that have left the party. Atiku, Saraki, the CPC leader that merged with AC to be APC, they're all talking about the irregularities in the party, apart from the fact that we can openly see how the police are being used, he says, to torture. All right, very interesting. I don't know if it's kind of evolved into that, but we also have tweets coming in, so let's go over to Twitter, where we have Flex Master Nate, who says Nigerian politicians only stay in a party that precludes them from criminal investigation and allows them influence in contract sharing or appointments. The Nigerian people are never in their agenda, so either join them or leave the country for better opportunities. And Steve Obiako says, on carrying the Senate President along, I was just as Shiwaju was viewed as a stakeholder. No government has practiced this level of nepotism. APC is losing it, they say. Okay. Let's keep it moving. Devoe, coming back. Specifically, it's actually a particular investor, Alhaji Tukur Modibo, the chairman and chief executive of Jos Electricity Distribution Company, JECO, who is speaking at a media parley that says, listen, he's ready to sell assets which he bought at $82 million 5 years ago for $72 million US. He's like, listen, whoever wants to buy it, come and get this. We need to speak with the minister. We're calling on to him because just blaming the discos for all the problems is not going to solve the issue of the sector.
It is amazing that someone would be willing to give away all this at a discount. What are they really running from? $82 million? I'm willing to give away 10 million, take 72 in this day and age. Now, if you remember back then in the last administration when the power reform, the transmission company and the discos. Now, we thought that we would see an improvement, but it hasn't really gone that far. We're still discussing 4,000 megawatts at the end. The discos are coming together to say, look, okay, we're done with it. We will even give away the investment. Whether that's going to be considered a force majeure or not, that is yet to be seen. And in the case of a force majeure, they might not get anything. They might come with penalties. Now, I think I have actually proposed a revoking of the license, because if we remember the politicking that took place around the sharing of these discos, many of the investors were not known players in the markets. They were more or less political cronies that got the benefit of the policies of that season. Now we see the technicality playing out that they can deliver. They're refusing to invest, and of course, since they haven't made money, how are they even going to pay back their loans? Now, this stalemate, I believe, even though it's tough, it can be resolved. Just like the same way the presidency raised the price of fuel on their entry from 97 to about 145. I think it's a tough decision. It might be hard for Nigerians, but if they do revoke the licenses and allow a fresh go at the power structures, it may bring about what we're looking for. Secondly, the government may want to consider the regional blockades, whereby regions will be able to be self-sustaining if they have the capacity.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Devoe. Moving swiftly on from the Punch newspaper is our next story. Drama as the court stops the swearing in of Imo Deputy Governor Designate. Oji, I'm going to let you take us through this one, as we found out that there was mild drama at the Imo State Government House in Owerri on Tuesday after a state high court sitting in the state capital stopped the swearing in of the Deputy Governor Designate, Callistus Ekenze. There's been a lot of issues there, but your thoughts?
There are three issues. One bad, one good, one bad. So I'll do it in this order.
Okay.
Bad. Look, democracy as practiced all over the world is not for Nigeria. Okay? When I say democracy, I'm talking about constitutional government that has principles like separation of powers.
Okay, not demonstration of craze.
We don't have it at all. Separation of power means there are three arms of government, both or the three of whom are independent, and none is subservient to the other. Now, what has actually happened in Nigeria since 1999, if not even since 1960, is that the executive always have power more than the others, which they can wield at influence. Let's come to Imo State. This is the second time the deputy governor will be impeached under the same within this 3-year period. And I don't need a soothsayer or a sorcerer to tell me that the governor has a hand in the removal. There's no, this is not speculation.
Yes.
And this is not the only state where it's happened. It's all over. Let's go back to the issue of Saraki and the presidency. So if you read that, he's
exactly
carefully worded reason.
Yes.
Part of the reason is given is that the executive arm of government do not appreciate what separation of powers mean. Because if you try to tell them this is how it's done, they will think you are anti-corruption, you're anti-government.
Then he also spoke of just the two arms of government and completely missed out the judiciary.
This is why this story includes judiciary.
Yes.
So the point I'm making is that we don't understand what separation of power means. That's why we are able to remove. A governor can effect the removal of his deputy by controlling the legislative arm of government easily. Unfortunately, here they've now moved it to the judiciary. It's always been the case anyway. So the story here is that the deputy governor of Imo State was removed on, I believe it was on Monday, and by Tuesday they were supposed to swear in the new the deputy governor designate Callistus Ekenze. I don't know when he was ratified by the legislature, but what happened here is that a judge of the High Court granted an order restraining the chief judge from swearing in the deputy governor designate. The good thing, I said good, bad. The good thing is that for some reason the governor refused to swear in because the chief judge said it was chief in, and they respected that decision. Just one thing I need to mention, which is important. A source here, the story says a source told our correspondent that the chief judge said he would not swear in as long as it was a court order, that it was not good for him to be seen as disobeying a court order. According to the source, the chief judge advised the governor to go and get a restraining order vacated. My question is, this discussion between the governor and the chief judge, did it take place in court or in the house? That I don't know. But good that they've obeyed an order of court. Bad that it appears as if the power of the governor over the legislature has also moved to the judiciary.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Orji. Very quickly, let's touch on this one as Buhari has been elected the new chairman of ECOWAS. The story we're taking it from or the paper we're taking it from is the Vanguard newspaper. Devoe, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Buhari is the big brother of Africa, actually. In this case, West Africa. And he did mention in his winning speech that though he didn't vie for the position, they foisted it on him. That's not hard to understand how come. Obviously, Nigeria is the biggest landmass and even economy within the West African surface. Now, ECOWAS does have its challenges, right? Has Nigeria been able to deliver on the gains or the merits of ECOWAS? And this is what they expect Buhari to deliver, even though he's about to leave even though there's an election about to take place. One issue of foreign policy, I've not heard much about. The only time we saw Nigeria did make a move was when the Gambian president was causing issues before he left, where he made a move. There's a language barrier. French, English, and one other language is being spoken in our midst. And how do we move forward when each time we need interpreters? You do know with interpretation comes some delay in time. Secondly, there's widespread poverty amongst the African states. This needs to be looked into, which has led to most reasons why we need to see enhanced economic trade among the West African states. Human rights abuse, as you do know, many of the West African states have had one issue here or the other in terms of listening or granting court decisions. Even here, whereby the ECOWAS gave a decision on the Dausuki case, yet our government took a different position. Then mostly, a lot of the West African states are still largely influenced by the colonial powers. Now, and then lastly, single currency. I'm hoping that in this little last minute that Buhari has, that he takes an ample move. I don't think it's difficult for Nigeria to show a leading position. We may not achieve single currency just yet, but I think we can begin to trade better with ourselves. This has been a dream that even Thomas Sankara had for a long time. Let's not even discuss the African Free Trade Agreement. Even amongst countries that we have a closer knit with, I think we should be able to trade far, far better, which will improve the gains of not just business people in Nigeria, but also the political, social, economic landscape among the West African states.
Thank you very much for that. That single currency dream stays alive. Up on Twitter, Miss Ayomide says, from day one, the whole privatization of this move in bond firms never had the technically and or financial competence to fix the power crisis in Nigeria with the dilapidated decades of old power infrastructure in the country. I saw this coming, she says. Up next, did you see this one coming from the Daily Times? Gbolahan, I want your thoughts on this story. Patients' Bill of Rights will restore the dignity in Nigeria's healthcare practice. Our Vice President speaking out on this, saying that it should also help with funding coming into healthcare in Nigeria. And of course, it will help with the most important of all rights, the right to life, in which it inherits the right to adequate healthcare. Your thoughts?
Yes, well, this article anyway talks about the Bill of Rights, which is just initiated anyway. Well, so far from what I could actually really gather about it, it just talks about the technicalities as to the benefit of having good healthcare system in a country, which is very important. Of course, when you look at it anyway, it's often that a healthy nation is a wealthy nation, so it's very important to take into cognizance that we need to spend money, but it hasn't actually really highlighted how we're going to get this funding, where exactly are we going to be putting the money into as well too. All it only just talks about is just about the the technical bits about it. Maybe later on in the future we'll actually be able to flesh out some more details as to what this bill is all about.
Thank you very much for that. And very quickly on to our next one. This is quite important, actually, from ThisDay newspaper. Court has freed 100 Shiite members in detention. And Orji, of course, being our legal eagle, you will be taking us through this story very briefly. Your thoughts on this, especially considering the very tense relationship between the government, this particular administration, and the Shiite movement in general?
When the history of this administration will be written, I'm not sure history will favor them in terms of their handling of this Shiite dispute. The good thing here is that the courts have freed 100 of the Shiite members who were in detention. They were alleged or accused of aiding and abetting murder, which is interesting. And of course, that will include also a conspiracy. It was always a long shot. These are people who lost from their own account. They lost over 1,000. From the government account, hundreds were in fact buried in shallow graves, so which the government is not even denying. So both the federal government and the state government, Kaduna State, have not acted well in this. I understand again in 2 days' time that of El Zakzaki, who is still in custody together with his wife. According to the state, it says protective custody, whatever that means. His own case is coming up in a few days' time. Whether the court will obey it again, we don't know, but these people have been freed and they should please go home and rest. They have suffered for nothing.
So, small victories. And speaking of small victories, it's worth mentioning just this final headline, and we've come to the end of Freshly Pressed from the Punch newspaper. The Lagos state government moves against sexual harassment in workplaces. They've inaugurated an anti-sexual harassment program in an effort to fight said sexual harassment in workplaces. What are your thoughts?
Well, you have to commend Lagos state government for setting the pace when it comes to most of all these new policies and legislation as well. So, they've done very well on the child's rights.
Somebody is working.
It is working. We're talking about sexual harassment as well too. And I must say as well too, we do have incidences of sexual harassment happening a lot in Nigeria.
Every way.
And people do not really understand it at all. But I'll end with this as well. So what they have done is that they've actually given us a telephone number to call, which is 0813-796-0048, or you can also dial *6820#.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Very important information
I think
there.
It's a good
and we will be
story.
tweeting that as well.
Because people don't know what sexual harassment is.
Yes, and we'll probably do that tomorrow inside of Lagos Talks. For today, we are going to be focusing on a pension special. We have Pen Up coming into the studio. I will be looking at that. But thank you very much to our analysts for coming in. Please find them up online. Devoe Okorie is his handle. At Orji Uka is Orji's handle. And Mr. G Quest is Gbolahan's handle. So you can find them up there. And a big shout out to Joseph Smith up on our live stream, who actually did leave us with this comment saying, why is it always that the opposition party members are being prosecuted and persecuted by this APC-led EFCC? Honestly, all our institutions need to be strengthened and not controlled by politics. Get your PVC there is what Gbolahan is whispering. And up on Twitter, Chika Gina says, just to hear that the chairman of Jos Electricity Distribution wants to sell his asset $72 million is against $82 million that he bought it. Well, it's common sense that 5 years ago, $82 million was 13.1 billion naira, while 72 million today is 25.9 billion. Lagos, on that note, we are done. Thank you very much. But do stick around, because coming up at 8:15, we will be talking sports inside the locker room. Kayode Bakare will be joining us, so stay with us.
You have to take that story. Yesterday, another station did it. You saw calls, Lagos Talks. People were saying women and their dressing. That there was a closet that there's
I can't help it.
Yeah, even when they have curves. Have you been to the north before?
Yes,
you know they don't wear underwear up north.
I wouldn't.
They're ready.
How would you know?
Why do you know
Those guys.
Why do you know this?
What's the conversation with you?
They're ready to go.
Or you have a mirror?
God.
I don't know.
I have real questions.
I entered the
Why
flight.
do you know that you're still on YouTube by doing?
I entered the flight.
I'm still free to end our YouTube live stream.